All right, I have good news and bad news. Which do you want first? The good news, great, good call. It's still a Pixel. The bad news, it is still a Pixel. See, the Pixel 10 has had some high hopes and some hype behind it for the past couple months. You know, it's the 10th generation, it could be special. The first one with a TSMC chip could be special. Some other things could be revamped alongside Android 16. Like, it was looking really promising to potentially reboot the whole Pixel thing, to finally have it really competing with flagships. Now, instead, it is very much all the things we liked and all the things we disliked about the Pixel already, but the competing with flagships part is coming in the form of a mainstream marketing push, a Jimmy Fallon presentation, a Jonas Brothers music video. I can't say I would have spent the money the exact same way if I was in charge of the Pixel program, but hey, that's why I'm the reviewer and they're the Google executives. So, unlike the event, let's just focus on the phones. So this thing is very similar to last year in design, in materials, and in character. Like the camera visor, the glossy glass back with the satin aluminum sides, and vice versa on the Pro phones. Even as an enthusiast about this stuff, you could probably show me a Pixel 9, and unless I knew exactly which one was the new gray color, it could be easily mistaken for the new one. And to me, honestly, that's fine. I love this design. The camera bar is nice for holding the phone. It gathers some dust, sure, but you'll probably also have a case on your phone. Great clicky buttons, great haptics. All of these things are still true about the Pixel. The bad news, though, is that the things that the Pixels of the past have been lacking, this one is still lacking. Pixels have never had the biggest numbers or the most bleeding edge hardware. And these Pixel 10s are still Pixels, so they don't have super fast charging, they don't have a brand new massive silicon carbon battery, they don't have huge new camera sensors or record-breaking displays. My personal biggest annoyance with the Pixel 9 was the optical underscreen fingerprint reader was kind of slow. This Pixel 10 actually does have an ultrasonic fingerprint reader now, and it's faster than Pixel 9, but just a slight beat behind the other ultrasonic flagships now. But that counts as technically new. So hey, while we're at it, here's everything that's technically new with the Pixel 10s and my take on them. The main new thing is we get a full triple cameras on the base phone. And I'll get more into the quality of those cameras in a minute, so that is a nice inclusion. After that, it's a bunch of subtle things that sort of combine to make it feel a little more flagship-y, but without actually leapfrogging into ultra phone territory. So the fingerprint reader, like I said, is ultrasonic now and slightly faster, and the display that it's built into is a bit brighter too, so it looks better outdoors. The bezels didn't get thinner, but there's little grills now over the slightly better speakers at the bottom of the phone that are color matched to the metal now. Cool. And the physical SIM card tray is now completely gone. This phone in the US is eSIM only, which I don't like. eSIM support, great. Forcing me to use eSIM, not my favorite thing. Only the carriers win with this. And to be fair, maybe I'm over-indexing this just a little bit because I test a lot of phones. I move my physical SIM card really quickly between lots of phones. It takes like 10 seconds to switch and test something out real quick. So I don't like this at all, but yeah, eSIM only. The batteries are about 200 milliamp hours larger in these phones across the lineup. That's a nice win. But the internals that are gonna make a real difference that people are actually gonna care about are Tensor and Pixel Snap. So all right, we gotta talk about this new Tensor chip. Google phones for years have used off-the-shelf chips from Qualcomm, which made sense. They were great. And then the Pixel 6 was the first one to use their in-house designed Tensor chip instead. And the promise of Tensor was never really clear, but the idea was to give Google much more control over these chips and for optimizing for exactly what they want to get out of a Pixel. The thing is, the first Tensor chip wasn't that good. Actually, it was so weak that it had people considering if they should have even left Qualcomm in the first place. But, you know, we got to let them cook for a little bit, right? Let them develop this idea. And so a couple generations in, all of these first few Tensor chips were sort of co-designed with Google and Samsung, and it was heavily based off of an Exynos chip, and actually still fabricated by Samsung. So fast forward to today. The Pixel 10 is powered by a Tensor G5 chip, the first version of a totally Google-designed Tensor chip on a 3nm process and manufactured straight by TSMC, which seems like the perfect opportunity to make a huge leap in power, in efficiency, in achieving the original mission of doing their own Tensor chip. And it turns out it's good. It's a really good chip, but it's not magic. The main complaint that I and other Redditors would have about Tensor chips of the past was that they were simply not flagship level power of CPU and GPU. And this is a $1,000 phone. Like for this price, I could just get a Galaxy S25 Plus and have a Snapdragon 8 Elite, or an iPhone 16 with an A18. So this new Tensor G5 is more performant than before, but it's not miraculously jumping all the way to the level of the Snapdragon 8 Elites of the world. And I'm starting to think that's not even really one of its goals. Tensor G5 benchmarks like a mid-range phone. Like the CPU is about 30% better than last generation, but is a solid amount still behind the Snapdragon chips in Samsung phones. And it's closer to like the 8S Gen 4, the one in the Nothing Phone 3. And the GPU gap, if my benchmarks are correct, are even bigger. For some reason, Geekbench 6 OpenGL scores are literally half of the Pixel 9s and a full like 600% behind the Snapdragon 8 Elite. Jesus. Its strongest area, though, is definitely the TPU, where this one is 60% more powerful than last generation, and that is intentional. This is the Tensor processing unit that's specifically designed to accelerate machine learning and AI-related tasks like running on-device models, editing photos, etc. This is what Google has decided is most important to them with these phones and these chips. They want them to be the fastest and most capable AI devices. So in the real world, performance-wise, this Pixel 10, it is a really smooth phone with everyday tasks. I've been flying around Android 16, multitasking, flying through apps. High refresh rate is always on. Not even really thinking about it too much. It's been very fluid. I will say though, when I went in after a few days into display settings and flipped from high resolution to max resolution, things sharpened up a bit, but the phone also did get slightly, just barely noticeably slower. Just a few dropped frames here and there, which I didn't expect. And I would also not be shocked at all if you did head-to-head comparisons with graphically intense games and frame rate measurements of the Pixel 10 fall far behind the higher, more powerful GPU chips. It also lacks hardware-accelerated ray tracing. But that's just not the big strength of this phone. Never has been. And it's still a Pixel, so I'm not expecting it ever will be. What I can say is at least the battery life for my use has been solid. It's been solid. I've been mostly testing the Pixel 10 Pro, not the XL, so even on a regular sized phone, I'm getting all-day battery, near dead by the end of the day, but like 6 hours of screen on time and high brightness and all that, so it's been decently efficient. My main concern is now shifting to how well this phone will age, so maybe trying to come back to this in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, just to see how well this does compared to previous Pixels. But for now, the Tensor chip, it's not some miraculous savior that makes it an ultra flagship, but good chip. Good chip. You know what's really good though? Pixel Snap. It sounds silly, but this has genuinely become one of my favorite new features about the Pixel 10s. It's just such a quality of life improvement, especially as someone who is a card-carrying member of Team No Case. So these phones have Qi 2 wireless charging now, and it's only at 15 watts or 25 on the XL, but it's so incredibly convenient to just be able to slap the Pixel onto any of my existing MagSafe accessories, navigating with the phone in the dash in the morning, dropping the phone on a wireless charger on my desk where they automatically align, keeping it topped up on a long travel trip with my Ridge power bank. Even if you aren't someone with a bunch of existing MagSafe stuff sitting around, it just opens you up to this massive world of options for magnetic accessories for things you can attach to your phone, or things you can attach your phone to. And I even think this is actually slightly stronger than MagSafe magnets on the iPhone, at least with the first-party Google accessories they've optimized, like with this Pixel Ring stand I got to try. Honestly, this was the perfect addition to this phone. It's like it was already a phone that didn't have very fast wireless charging, and so it still doesn't have very fast wireless charging, but it just gained a ton of functionality. Thumbs up. The two things that always make a Pixel though, well, that would be the cameras and the software. So I have good news and bad news again. Which do you want first? The good news. Classic. The software is still awesome. These phones all ship with Android 16 out the box, all of the fun Material 3 expressive updates, the fun smart wallpaper cutout effects, the animations, the haptics, the notification jiggle physics. all this stuff. There's some weird stuff that's not all perfect. Like, I don't love how massive some of the buttons are getting. Like, okay, maybe the alarm app one makes sense. Fine, make those bigger. But the weather app, like this list of locations has such massive gaps now, so much dead white space between them. Or the phone app now too. They're making these buttons huge. This new Gmail app, these archive buttons are absolutely massive. And look at this stopwatch. Jesus. But, you know, for the most part, I'm loving how colorful and clean and fluid everything has been. And there's so many little things you can tweak and poke around and have fun with. Trust me, just watch a few YouTube tutorials on how to set up the perfect quick settings or have the ultimate all widgets home screen setup. It's awesome, super flexible. You're welcome. And then there's all the AI stuff on top as well, because, you know, Google. And there's a lot of this stuff that sort of just pops up as you start using this phone, and you can choose to engage with it or just kind of ignore it if you're not into it. But any one of these features could turn out to be that awesome thing that makes you want to stick with the Pixel, like call screening or now playing. And so the big new one on the Pixel 10s that's got its own section in the settings and everything is called Magic Queue. And this Magic Queue, it's a very Google thing that's supposed to take data from across your different apps and services and then surface them where you need them. At least that's what it's supposed to do. Now, I was using this phone and trying to get it to work. Like, I was lobbing up perfect situations for it to kick in and read my Gmail or read my calendar and then give me the perfect text to send back. But it rarely seemed to work exactly the way I wanted it to, like it did in my original demos. The thing it did the most often was it just kept giving me a link back to like open my calendar and check for the information myself, which is still kind of helpful, but only half as helpful as advertised. I have all the settings turned on, so it's supposed to be able to look into any of these apps, screenshots, email, messages, also Keep and Contacts and Calendar, to return the answer to the question pulled from inside the app. A few times I did actually get that to work for me, but sometimes it was wrong. Like, I have Andrew asking me for my flight info next week, but it's giving me the info to the flight I have this week. And that would be fine if I could go edit it before I send it, but if I click it, it just sends the whole thing automatically. And doesn't also include some of the information I would think you want, like the flight number. I can see the promise here. It's just, it feels like it's still a work in progress. The other thing though that I found pretty interesting was conversational editing. It actually is coming to all phones with Google Photos, so it's not just like a specific Pixel thing, so I won't spend too much time on it, but it's potentially a game changer because it's semantic photo editing from text prompts. So it understands what you're asking for and then does the editing for you. From simple stuff like, you know, brighten up the faces, or remove the road sign, or even just make this picture better, which usually does like a nice crop and centers it around the subject and evens out the exposure, but all the way up to complicated stuff too, like add a hot air balloon to the sky. It'll do that. Or delete the cars and make the sky bluer. And then it does it. It just does a surprisingly good job just from hearing what you said. Google, genuine question. Is video editing next? Is that even possible? Should I be concerned? Excited? I don't know. We'll see. There's a couple other things like the Journal app and Notebook LM, which are both pre-installed on these phones. Also, Daily Briefs was next to useless for me. Like, it's supposed to be tailored to me and relevant to my day, but yeah, that's not really a ton of useful information here. But overall, like I said, the software is really good. And if there's anything that pops up that you don't like, you can literally just ignore it. So that is the good news. So then the bad news, the cameras. And this is where it kind of gets a little bit weird. It's not like they're bad cameras, but the bad news is that it does feel like the cameras are slipping a little bit. The Pixel has leaned heavily on elite software processing for years. They, surprise, never really had the biggest sensors or the best hardware, but they pioneered HDR+, and the Pixel camera always had this sort of confident, contrasty look to it. This generation of phones, it still has that look, but objectively speaking, like these cameras, they just don't stand out from the pack nearly as much anymore, and in some ways they're kind of falling behind a bit now. Triple cameras, like I said, are awesome to have on the base phone. So that 48 megapixel main camera, the ultra wide, and the telephoto is a 5x, and then the Pros have a bigger 50 megapixel main camera, a bigger, higher resolution ultra-wide, and a bigger, higher resolution 5x telephoto as well. So regular wide shots from the Pixel 10 and 10 Pro, they look great. You know, sure, the sensor's a little smaller on the base one, but they both do a great job with sharpness and dynamic range and lots of detail, and usually pretty great color too. They have that look. Night sight is still elite, but past that, it's just not good at any type of zoom like I was hoping it would be. The ultra wide is okay, but usually pretty soft around the edges with a bit more chromatic aberration that I'm used to seeing. And then trying to zoom in was like just surprisingly bad, at least compared to other flagships with decent zoom. Almost every photo I've taken, even on these Pros that's zoomed in, is just soft. Like colors would be fine and it's bright enough and it's not a terrible image. Mission still accomplished, I guess. But like this super res zoom feature on the Pros that kicks in for everything past 30x really feels like it encourages me to take a bunch of zoom photos because once I do, it'll run it through the processing and sharpen things up and resolve detail out of thin air with a little machine learning. But yeah, the results just weren't that great. I didn't even go all the way to 100x. All the pictures I'm taking are like 30 to 50x, and they kind of look like they have a cartoon filter over them, even compared to a pretty mediocre zoom like the iPhone 16 Pro. And it gets absolutely smoked by a good zoom like the S25 Ultra, even though that's more expensive. Maybe I shouldn't be complaining about 50x zoom photos, maybe nobody cares, but the sweet spot for zoom is definitely like 5 to 10x or a little past that maybe. And then the wide photos are still obviously really good. It's just the gaps in zoom performance are a little weird considering how much it seems to encourage me to take zoom photos. And then there's video performance, which is still also beat behind the flagships. If you want to see samples, I'm planning on shooting the next autofocus video on the Lucid Gravity on this phone. So if you care about either Pixel 10 Pro video or the newest, very impressive Lucid SUV, get subscribed over there. I'll drop a link below the like button. But yeah, it'll be all the A-roll shots, and then the B-roll will still be from the iPhone, so you can compare the two. So, the Pixel 10. It's still a Pixel. It feels like the Pixel is a finished / complete thought for now, just based on the way Google's acting and working around this phone. And they're not making any big philosophical changes to the way they attack making a Google phone. They're just trying again to take it to the masses. So if you didn't like the Pixel last year for certain reasons, like, you know, oh, it's not the best hardware or it's not the most powerful, then you still won't like the Pixel. But if you loved the Pixel of previous years because, oh, it's this cool design that you like, or it's got great stills or awesome software, then you'll love this Pixel too. Google's path of trying to bring the Pixel to the masses is definitely challenging. Maybe they really believe in Jimmy Fallon and the other celebrity endorsements that will be their savior and finally make it happen. Me personally, I think the other half of their strategy of like directly addressing the masses that are on iPhones here and giving them reasons to switch with like Pixel Snap and other directly competitive parallel features, I think that is far more interesting. And I did just make an entire video about this, so I'll link this below if you haven't seen that yet. But the Pixel still being a Pixel, to me, is mostly good news. I really like the Pixel. I'm probably going to switch to this Moonstone Pixel 10 Pro as my main daily driver phone. And then I'm probably going to switch off of it to something with more tempting, interesting hardware features. And then I'll probably switch back when I get bored with the other weird software experiences and I want this feeling again. And then I'll probably switch off of it again when it starts aging poorly. I don't really know. The Pixel is right where it's always been. But you know it's not where it's always been? New products from channel sponsor Ridge, like the new magnetic power bank that works with Pixel Snap. See, Ridge has been in the everyday carry scene for years, but when I joined the team, we wanted to add a little more tech to their lineup. So they created the Ridge magnetic power bank. It's a 10,000 milliamp hour portable battery bank that has 5 different ways to charge your tech. With Pixel Snap, you can seamlessly connect it to your back of your phone and charge wirelessly. Or if you want, you can use the built-in wires for 20-watt wired charging to top up a little faster. And it even has a nice kickstand, so you'll be able to tackle any long plane ride without having to sweat your battery life. And you might be wondering, why do I need a lightning cable if I'm a Pixel user? And let's be real, you probably have some iFriends. They're probably all caught up in their blue bubble world, forgot to pack their charger. So if you're feeling nice, you can help them top up too. And my favorite part is you can charge multiple devices at the same time with pass-through. So this ends up being a nice little one-stop shop for travel charging. It comes in 3 sweet colors, Basecamp Orange, and also Matte Olive, and the obvious choice, matte black. And if you don't love it within 99 days, send it back. No questions asked. So head over to ridge.com/mkbhd to get 10% off your orders. And remember, every dollar you spend until September 15th is more entries in the Ridge Summer Sweepstakes. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.